let's talk about the portion of the game that I felt was maybe the most important in last night's loss to the Memphis Grizzlies for the Phoenix Suns. And just looking at a run of, I believe, 15-1 that they went on to essentially close Q3 and then to immediately open up Q4 and see the Grizzlies go on a 15-0 run to take back the lead it speaks to the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, and the variance within this game for both teams. And it's something that the Suns have to put a stopgap on. So let's just talk about the end of that Q3 and then the early part of Q4, as I feel like that was the most important stretch of the game. All right, coming out, we're going to see immediately it's the Suns on the defensive side of the floor. And this is where they really started to dictate and started to put their stamp on things and getting out into runouts and playing with pace and tempo into the half court and also scoring in transition in early offense. So here we're going to see as the Grizzlies are setting up, ultimately they're going to get into some kind of late clock for a pistol action. Nonetheless, they're going to get into it. We're going to see the screen coming in from Williams at the bottom right corner with Booker and Beal involved in action. They're going to do a good job switching it, but before we even get to that part, I want to make sure we pointed out that part first. Notice as we shift our attention to the middle of the floor where Drew Eubanks is right now, around the top of the key, and Chimezie Metu, who's at the opposite block, or at the opposite elbow right now, rather. Look at the communication that's going to go on with those two. So you see the Memphis Grizzlies looking to manipulate space by involving Desmond Bane in some stagger or double away or strong action. A lot of different verbiage for it, but it's just staggers from the weak side of the floor as they try to sneak in this pistol screen here. Something that the Suns had ran a whole lot with Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson, just to get that switch, get that screen under, stay under play. But because of the communication from Eubanks, and especially even more so with Metu, reverting Drew Eubanks' attention back to the strong side where the primary action is unfolding, because of the communication between those two, especially from Metu, we're going to see Eubanks peeled in early, and he's going to just completely put a stopgap on this action right here. What was initially could have potentially even been an advantage, because looking at where Drew Eubanks is right now and help in location, but also where his head is turned. He's not even looking at the primary action. That's what Marcus Smart is hoping for as he gets ready to come off of the screen from Williams. But because of Eubanks and even more so Metu communicating this, Eubanks ultimately ends up in perfect position. And he's not just there, he's there with activity. And the Suns are going to do a great job of just playing off of that, disrupting flow. And then as they get back into another screen, we're going to see, as I pause it here, late clock, Eubanks doing a great job here now, getting out on the screen on the outer third of the floor and just putting pressure on the ball. Absolutely saying no to Marcus Smart being able to turn this corner, as you see a quick hedge here initially, and then he gets back and it ultimately turns into 2 to the ball. And now look at the Suns rotate out of this. This steal from Josh Okogie is unbelievable. And this is the benefits that the Suns get from having Josh Okogie on the floor for this team. He's just extremely good with playing the passing lanes, and on top of everything that he does from the point of attack, he's such a chaos-inducing and active rotation defender. And we see this rotation here. This is off script. He's just reading and reacting at this point, and he's able to get a beat on this pass and gets a steal. And now again, like I talked about in the open, they're playing in the open floor. He's able to get a layup +1 in transition, and he would make that free throw. Coming down the floor on the next defensive possession, now we see Okogie at his point of attack and defense. He's doing a great job being directional with Desmond Bane, influencing him to his left hand. And in addition to that, being accompanied by Drew Eubanks stepping up to the level of the screen, ultimately just trying to flatten Desmond Bane out as much as they possibly can. And then as Desmond Bane kind of tries to get a little bit of action as he drives away from Eubanks, Okogie's back peeled in, and look at the rotations from the Suns. Everybody's on script. They bled away half of the shot clock almost at this point, and the Grizzlies have barely moved the ball. They finally ultimately get a drive, but we're going to go back to looking at Eubanks here, hedging out on Desmond Bane, and I'll just follow him as he gets back into position to help and take away this driving lane. And that's ultimately going to force a turnover. Great stretch of minutes here from Drew Eubanks to close the third quarter. And just generally in the game, he was just solid. And now here we're going to see Josh Okogie. This is all him on this rep. Just looking at him at the point of attack, being disruptive, breaking rhythm, and ultimately he's going to end up netting himself a steal as they try to get into a little bit of flare action here as he steals it over the top. And this is going to end up getting blocked by Bismack Biyombo, but as the Suns flow into out of bounds from the baseline, a very tough location, I might mention. We're going to kind of see some of the faults within their process when players like Eric Gordon aren't available to play within the rotation because he was out for this game. So we go from baseline out of bounds to ultimately going into spread pick and roll with Devin Booker and Drew Eubanks. And look at who's one pass away. From the left side is going to be Grayson Allen spaced in the deep corner, taking away a low man. But because of who's spaced on the strong side, or excuse me, who's on the side of the floor that Devin Booker is going towards in this specific action, spacing-wise for the Suns, look at where Chimezie Metu's man, who's currently spaced one pass away above the break in the direction that Devin Booker is going towards. Look at where his man is. And it's to the point where the Grizzlies defensively have sunk in completely into the floor to shrink the floor on Devin Booker and ultimately, truly, literally conceding this pass here. Devin Booker is trying to read this, but there is no read to make because Metu's helped so far off of. This is where the difference in having somebody like him instead of Eric Gordon in this rotation, in this specific lineup, makes a huge difference. If this is Eric Gordon, they're not going to be nearly, not even close to as comfortable helping off of him as they are here sinking in and shrink the floor on Booker with Metu one pass away. And because of that, they're not going to get anything out of this rep, unfortunately. But we're going to see Drew Eubanks get this offensive rebound, and he's going to get fouled. Now we're going to watch Eubanks as we get into the next rep make this free throw. And this is a stretch of positive play for the Suns. Look at after he missed the first one, he made the second one. And look at Josh Okogie, just figuring out how to be effective within the play. Finds his man, makes a beeline towards Desmond Bane. Unexpected by the Memphis Grizzlies, clearly. And we're going to see this pass ultimately be broken up by Okogie. This is like a coverage sack, essentially, in basketball. Errant pass because the defense disrupted what they thought would be there. And the Suns are going to end up getting a possession out of that. And following that possession, another string of plays in a nice little sequence of plays from Josh Okogie. We're going to see him as the baseline inbounder here, playing a role of what we used to see from Jay Crowder. We're going to see Okogie doing a great job of just feeling out where the defense is. Suns run some good action here with the exchange here between Booker and Allen. And Allen, that's ultimately going to net Allen great leverage underneath the defense as they try to play aggressive, customary to how the Grizzlies were guarding in this game. Okogie's able to find the advantage, and he's able to hit Grayson Allen on the bucket. And then on the next possession, defensively, now we're looking at Okogie again at the point of attack, being directional with Desmond Bane. He does a great job again with Drew Eubanks influencing him to his left hand, keeping him to his left hand, ultimately putting two to the ball here. And as I pause it right here, we saw what happened at the point of attack and at the point of the screen between those two. Now let's look at the attention. Let's take our attention over to Devin Booker underneath the basket here. This is empty corner pick and roll early in the shot clock from the Memphis Grizzlies. And look at where Devin Booker is. I've talked about the low man play for the Suns since the Christmas Day game against the Mavericks and how it has to be so much better. Now we're seeing Devin Booker peeled in extremely early. Bane hasn't even quite used the screen yet, and we already see Devin Booker with 2 feet in the paint. He's going to see the pass go over to Biyombo, and he's going to immediately plug and jam the roll because he's early in his rotation as a low man. That is going to be accompanied by, after great communication between him and Metu, the communication comes in here as Booker peels in to say that he's a low man. Metu understands what his next rotation is. So as Booker steps up to plug and jam the roll, we're going to see Metu do a great job navigating the screen, and he's going to do just enough to get up a good contest on the three-point attempt. They're going to get the offensive rebound, but then they have to save it. And look at Metu out on the races, playing in space where he's best at, and he's going to end up getting a layup out of this. Great stretch of play from the Suns, again, I might mention, to end this third quarter. And then we're going to see them doing a great job doing what the Grizzlies were doing to them all game on this rep here. So as we revert our attention from the ball to the bottom of the screen, we're going to look at Josh Okogie on Desmond Bane. What they're doing is trying to keep the ball out of Desmond Bane's hand and flatten out any actions involving him, especially with Jaren Jackson Jr. not on the floor and Ja Morant out for this game. So we're going to see Okogie do a good job jumping topside, but guess what? You can't top block unless there's either switching being involved or you have help underneath the basket. Otherwise, you're conceding yourself to backdoor passes and backdoor cuts and all types of action underneath that leverage, which is what we saw from the Suns in multiple stretches in this game with Nurkic alleviating pressure and being a connector. Nonetheless, looking at the Suns defensively here, I mentioned Baines being top lock. They communicate that between Okogie and Metu. They just go with a high switch here. And then we're going to see Metu take over for Josh Okogie on Desmond Bane. They're going to stay high side, flattening out action. We're already almost halfway through the shot clock. And again, the Grizzlies have not even moved the ball much. And as we see Desmond Bane work to get open off of screens on the weak side, we're going to see Metu do a decent enough job navigating the first screen, and then we're going to see another high switch here between him and Devin Booker as they communicated with a point switch. That's going to continue to flatten out action. And now we're past halfway through the shot clock, and the Grizzlies only made 2 passes. No actions happened. Then we're going to see a pass that ultimately is at the Suns logo, and they're finally getting some type of offense going with 9 seconds left. And they bring Bismack Biyombo in to set the screen, looking where Devin Booker is on the ball. Another hat tip to Drew Eubanks being on time and on schedule, playing in time on task. And look at the Suns' rotations be faster than the Memphis Grizzlies' ball movement, ultimately netting themselves a shot clock violation. Another hell of a possession from this team in this stretch to end the third quarter on the defensive end. And then they come back to offense, and we already see Devin Booker directing traffic off the ball here. Want to make sure we also mention that he's off the ball because of the pressure that the Grizzlies were putting on him. You can already see here Marcus Smart is all over him. He's in his jersey. They do a great job with this end of quarter action here as they get a handoff here into a screen. This is Miami action. This is in the family of Chicago action, something that we see the Suns get into a lot. Get a quick handoff. That's going to be flowed into with the screen here from Eubanks. But we're going to pay attention to the spacing from the Suns and ultimately what's going to be a result of it as we let it just kind of flow through. Amazing pass from Booker. Great play design. Great finish, even more so through a contested catch here from Drew Eubanks. But let's look at what's going on in this action. So we get the Miami action, the handoff into the screen. But look at what Eubanks is doing because they know that Devin Booker is getting to the ball, especially with him only being on the floor by himself without Beal and Durant. Drew Eubanks just simply slips this screen, and look at all of the pace that's generated. Getting Devin Booker on the move to this extent, the point of the screen being this high on the floor, and Eubanks being able to sprint into the slip. And how quickly this action unfolds, it's allowing him to beat the low man rotation with having Saban Lee be high up on the floor, first of all, seeing where this is coming from. So the low man is going to be essentially non-existent. And in addition to that, Desmond Bane is just not tall enough to try to make an emergency support type of rotation here from low as well, in addition to that. And because of the play design, this is just the Suns executing to peak efficiency here with all types of pace and tempo in the half court. And this is where things started to turn against the Suns here as we get into this fourth quarter stretch. As I told you in the beginning, they had a 15-1 run to end the third quarter, immediately answered by a 15-0 run from the Memphis Grizzlies. And we just started to see some of the Suns faults within their rotation without some of the main players that they need, but just the general level of execution fall off a cliff. And so as we see here, this is where some snags in their process kind of hurt them. As we see, they're trying to get into the empty corner pick to post up for Kevin Durant. They get the switch there, but look at the help that's being conceded from Jaren Jackson Jr. as we see Kevin Durant getting the post position, and Jaren Jackson Jr. is all the way over the help line and overload help, and Bismack Biyombo is playing 2 on the second side. Now the Suns are going to do a very good job leveraging that spacing and ultimately getting a pin-in screen here as I pause it here from Keita Bates-Diop for Chimezie Metu. But that's just, again, because it's Metu and it's not somebody like Eric Gordon, they're conceding these shots and they want this pass to go to him. And this is just not a strong suit in this game, and it's kind of a fault in the Suns' process in terms of the lineups that they're using and how defenses can kind of play to that. And a little bit more of the same here. This time, they're not even allowing the screen as we see Marcus Smart playing topside, fronting the post here. In addition to Jaren Jackson Jr. stepping over the help line as we see him rotating over from underneath the basket, directing traffic for Bismack Biyombo to take away that eventual cut that he knows is going to come from the baseline. Flattens out action. Suns ultimately end up getting back to that side, and Saban Lee does a good job going lower than the screen to ultimately force the switch. And then we're going to see a catch here from Durant. But look at where this catch is. Because of all the shot clock time being bled away, in addition to how stagnant flow is within their half-court offense, this is ultimately going to see Durant have to work too hard ultimately to try to get a basket or even a shot on goal. And that's going to end up coming as he gets to one of his best pull-up points being that left block. even on the drive, he's going to still have to try to hit this shot over 2. And just the stagnant flow and pace of the offense, it really just fell off a cliff compared to what it was in the third quarter to what it is in this early fourth quarter stretch where the Grizzlies went on this run. And then we get into the Suns on the defensive side here, and we're just going to see some of the things just kind of falling apart. This is solid defense up top, solid defense through the middle portion of this play, but ultimately we're going to see just a lapse defensively, and there's going to be a bit of overhelp from Kevin Durant. So if you kind of let it flow through a little bit more, we see the Suns doing a solid job. Metu gets up to the level of the screen, and we see Keita Bates-Diop doing a great job jumping to that left hand of Jaren Jackson Jr. to keep him from going that direction. Gets the ball in his right hand. Saben Lee does a great job from the nail, just dislodging that. At this point, this is a stop. He's going to even have to put up a contested shot, and in addition to that, his back is going to end up being to the basket as he picks up the dribble. And Keita Bates-Diop does a great job of closing that airspace. The job is done. You've terminated his dribble. You've kept him from his left hand, and he's going to end up either having to pass this out, or he's going to be getting close to a 3-second in the paint call. But Kevin Durant, understandably so, because Jaren Jackson Jr. was hurting him, he just kind of comes over, and this is overhelp from Durant, and it's ultimately going to be what concedes in what should have been a stop or at least a stagnated play from the Suns defensively, a 3-point attempt for the Grizzlies, and they knocked that down in addition to them on their way to their comeback in this run. And then here we see the Suns again on the defense side of the floor, and we're just going to see Jaren Jackson Jr. getting into a post-up here. Solid job from Keita Bates-Diop initially, and an even better job working to push this catch point as far close to the 3-point line as he possibly can. However, look at where the Suns are at in terms of their rotations. So we get the overload here from Jusuf Nurkic, and that's going to be accompanied by Bradley Beal jumping closer to the passes, closer to the ball as well. I don't think they necessarily wanted this to be the coverage in terms of Jaren Jackson Jr. getting triple teamed here. Nonetheless, this is what they see. And as they ultimately see the kick out from Jaren Jackson Jr. because of the help that the Suns are conceding, the rotations out are solid, but Bradley Beal has to be a lot quicker firing off of this and getting to that second side to at least force this player here to just have to put the ball on the ground and run him off the 3-point line. Grizzlies do a great job with the speed and the pace of their rotations or the pass out, but you would much rather, obviously, it be Bradley Beal making this rotation rather than Jusuf Nurkic. Either way, both of them are late and off script, not in sync with each other. That's going to end up being a 3 for the Memphis Grizzlies to ultimately take back the lead that the Suns had garnered about halfway through the third quarter. And it's just these little things within their rotations and just being able to execute in time on task and getting timely stops to hold on to leads that they garner continues to be a thorn in their side. And that's something that they got to work through as they try to establish their identity, especially in fourth quarters and on the defensive side of the floor.